Welcome to Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer, a podcast where testicular cancer survivors, caregivers, and others who have navigated the cancer journey share their stories. The podcast comes to you from the Max Mallory Foundation, a nonprofit family foundation focused on educating about testicular cancer in honor and in memory of Max Mallory, who died in 2016 at the young age of 22 from testicular cancer. Had he survived, Max wanted to help young adults with cancer. This podcast helps meet that goal. Here now is your host, Joyce Lofstrom, Max's mom and a young adult cancer survivor.
Hi, everybody. This is Joyce, and we have a special program today for our podcast. We have our whole foundation with us of the Max Mallory Foundation, and we're going to talk about what we've been doing for the last 10 years since Max's death in 2016. So you all know me. I'm Joyce Lofstrom, and I'm also the secretary of our foundation, the Max Mallory Foundation. Chuck, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Chuck Mallory. I'm the treasurer of the foundation, and I'm in North Carolina. Everybody else is in Chicagoland.
John Mark.
And I'm John Mark Mallory. I'm Max's older brother. I'm the executive director of the foundation. But yeah, it's good to be here.
So we're just going to talk a little bit, as I said, about Max, about what we've been doing, about testicular cancer. And so the first thing we want to discuss is this 10-year anniversary. Max died in May of 2016. So next month will be 10 years. This is also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month as we record this. So the question I have is what's on each of our minds right now when we think about these last 10 years? What do you think about Max, about your life? So I can go ahead and start just to get us going. And I can't believe it's been 10 years. I mean, life always goes quicker than you think it does, but it seems like I don't know what it seems like, but 10 years seems like a long time, but it also seems like a short time. And when I think of Max, I always think about what he might have been doing now in game design and so forth. But I'm also glad that, glad isn't the right word, but if he had been through a lot of pain with his cancer, I'm glad he didn't have that. But we all miss him. I miss him too. And I think in terms of the podcast and life, the podcast gives us a way to give back to other people that might be facing this disease. And I hope it honors Max as well. So, Chuck, do you want to go next?
Sure. Of course, I can say many of the same things. It used to seem more recent to me. I think because it took me a very long time to get over his passing, and it was very hard, but it seems like now I can manage it quite a bit better. If someone had told me then what the past 10 years would be like losing a son, I wouldn't have wanted to hear it. I don't know if I would have believed it, but it's really good that we did decide to establish the foundation and do the things that we did, because it is important for me to be able to do things in Max's name and things that will honor him, because even though we'd all rather have him here, we didn't have a choice. It happened. So it's a healing thing to know that we can do something and keep his name out there and keep it going and do something positive. Plus, he wanted to help other young adults with cancer, so we can continue his mission. And all of that's really helpful. I went through a lot of changes. I moved away from Chicago, and I had always wanted to write something about the years with Max, and only now am I able to even do that emotionally. So I'm proceeding with that as well. But life goes on, and as long as I can, I'll just keep doing things on his behalf.
That's
Yeah.
John Mark?
Yeah, no, I echo a lot of the same things. I think it's a little bit different, obviously, for me because you all are his parents. So it's a kind of a different feeling that I can't quite relate to because I don't have kids. And it's something where, I think a lot about obviously what Max would be doing. And that was something that it's always kind of been, the term sibling rivalry exists for a reason. It's always kind of been the nature of siblings to compare themselves to one another. And I just think for a long time after Max died, I felt so bitter because I felt like Max was going to be so successful and that was like taken from us. But at the same time, I know that he would not want me to like ruminate on that negative kind of aspect of it. I think what I think a lot about is obviously, where he would be in life, but I also just think about things that happen and like events or different stories or something that we would have talked about if he were here, and what he would think about this or that, and I do think it's kind of surreal that it's been 10 years. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. Like when you say 10 years, it just seems like a marker of time. It's a decade, it's something that we measure in a unit, a separate unit of time. And it just doesn't, it doesn't seem like it's been that far away, but it is when I think back just kind of on the way that it's frozen in time where he was in life when he died, and what he was doing and what he was trying to accomplish and kind of how he was changing too, because he did want to do game design and stuff. But I know that when he got sick, he really was considering when he got better to help other people in the situation. I think it's good to have the foundation to be able to have opportunities like that. My feeling, obviously, as you all know, is that I could obviously be doing more and I want to do more. So that's something that I think about a lot. But it is overall very surreal to think that it's been that long and that this is like the anniversary kind of. It's not a milestone in the traditional sense of that word, but it's a marker of time passing. It's been a lot, but I'm glad that we've been able to get to this point.
I kind of like what you said there, Joe Mark, about how it's really not a milestone. People celebrate milestones, but it's a marker of
Mm-hmm.
time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're celebrating his life, but that's kind of a nice way or a different way to think about it. So I'm going to ask Chuck if you talk about the foundation. We started it in 2017, and you're really the person behind it, of us getting it going and just all of that. I don't know, talk about how we got it going and where we are, and then Joe Mark and I can jump in if we need to.
Okay. Well, we started it in 2017. Of course, we lost Max in May 2016. And since we knew he was sick, but didn't know that was the outcome, it took a while to just go through the initial phase of grieving and that sort of thing, and also thinking about how we could carry on his legacy. So it was
Mm-hmm.
formally put together and registered with the state in 2017. And we were fortunate, I think, in one little way that there has been no other name of a Max Mallory Foundation. If somebody had already used that name for a foundation, we wouldn't have been able to. And there are a lot of people I've discovered named Max Mallory out there in the world. Over time, I found that out. But we were set up as a private nonprofit family foundation, which was the best way for us to start and the easiest way for us to manage what we needed to do. And then we began doing activities and things like that. It's sort of twofold. We wanted to support Max, and that was the point, in honoring him by doing what we could have done in his place. That's where the foundation's work on testicular cancer awareness comes in, because he wanted to work with young adults. He wanted to bring up TC awareness. Sure, others have been doing it, but there's never enough. There still isn't. And so that carries on his goal. The other thing was he had a real love of the Media Arts and Game Development Department at the University of Whitewater, Wisconsin, where he graduated. And we did establish a scholarship in his name for students in the media arts and game development major, as well as fund their annual festival called MACD, and that they give prize money for awards for young students coming up in that field. And one thing that's interesting, which you guys may remember, we were at a MACD event where they were giving the awards a few years ago, and these aren't just games to play. Some of them are educational.
Yeah.
Max designed a game that was related to, and he was working on a game that was related to a cancer journey. So younger people are learning this way, and it's not just fun and games. There's things to learn, things to interact with. And so that's why I think that major is important. But we kept the foundation going all these years. It'll keep going. And the podcast has been a big cornerstone of it because our reach just continues to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add briefly to that, I just think too, it's been very cool to be involved in that MAGD program that Max was so fond of at his alma mater of Whitewater. And, you know, going there, especially in the couple of years after we established the foundation, and talking to people who knew Max and were still in that program at the time was very powerful for me because it was kind of a, not a sign, but just a confirmation that this was the right thing to do to honor Max, and it was a good way to keep his legacy going and be associated with something that he was so proud of and fond of as well. So that was another motivation. And I definitely think, you know, obviously we can always do more and do different things, but I'm very heartened or proud of what we have done so far with the program. It's been great.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's something students needed, and it's, you know, a scholarship is always a good way to carry on someone's name, I think, and what they did or what was important to them, like at Whitewater. So, and I think on the podcast, we thought about it, or I thought about it, well, probably for 2 years, because once we had the foundation going, I was thinking about the podcast. And it took a while to get it going and established, but I enjoy doing it, and I think we've learned a lot just talking to all these different people, all the, you know, men who have had the disease, their caregivers, some researchers. There's so many people out there that have a story to tell, and I think that's important for us to be able to share that. And as you said, Chuck, there's a lot of people already doing testicular cancer work through their respective organizations, but I have to agree I don't think there's enough out there. And so I'm glad that we could do this and, you know, make it work for all of us and for hopefully our listeners. So we have about 80 episodes that are live now, which to me is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so I just want to repeat one thing that I learned, just kind of, it's a segue into my question, our discussion about what do you think Max would think, but there's so much about mental health now in general about life, but there's new research out there from people in testicular cancer who are looking at, so what happens once you do survive? Are you okay from everything? And one person that will be on the podcast in the next month or so said that he's in his 20 years of survival, not one doctor asked him about his mental health. And I mean, that's a recent statement. That's like nobody asked him maybe in all the years he's been dealing with it. So I think that's one thing that in terms of what we've done or hope people listen to, is just that importance and having people talk about, researchers who can talk about why survivorship is important and dealing with what you have to deal with, from chemo and surgery and jobs and all, you know, everything that goes with survival. So
One thing that ties into that is with the podcast, I'm surprised, not really, but somewhat surprised at just how many people have turned to like humor as their main
yeah,
way to deal with or accept this diagnosis. And I do think that kind of ties into it because it is something that can mentally be a little bit of a relief, I think, when you are going through something so serious, to try and use humor to deal with it or accept it. And it is something that I have noticed definitely, that there are just not that many resources for any cancer treatment, really, when you're going through it, to have like mental health resources or checkups on that. It's not really a team mentality in that sense with mental health. It's more of a, they're looking at numbers and tests and everything of the cancer, which I understand. But yeah, there is definitely that need. I think that is a gap in the system for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I need to remind myself, and it's important for awareness and what we're doing, is that we've heard in the media that the young generation, the people in their 20s, let's say 20 to 30, which is a big part of the group of young men who do get testicular cancer diagnosis, we hear these stories about how they're going to AI to ask questions, how they go to social media to express their fears or hopes or things like that. This is a fully social media oriented generation, and they are fully in this for everything, turning to social media for answers, for people to look at and talk to, and things like that. And that's why awareness work is going to probably be moving in general into a different way, or a different way here. We've always had this in the past, people going to schools, going to coaches, going to teams, talking to them. All that's great. Get the word out there like that. But we're going to need more of information to come out through social media, through podcasts, through video, things like that, where people can reach out. It's pretty apparent that there's also this emotional component about mental health, because I've seen on Reddit in particular where a lot of young men will post something and it's either I don't want to tell anybody, which we hear, or it's I'm going to go to the doctor. My parents know, but now I'm terrified.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a whole new wave of people understanding the mental health aspects of it. And I think that they've worked in other areas of cancer on this, of course, but that's maybe something we can bring out too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Maybe that's an angle to take.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of people on the program, on the podcast, who mostly are caregivers, but people with testicular cancer that basically said, I didn't do anything for a year because I was afraid of it. Or one guy told me he thought he was going to die, so he just went and did everything he wanted to do. And then a year later, he went to the doctor and he was okay. It's that whole thing about men have to be able to talk about their health and do something about it. So it's still an issue.
Well, I think it's something that, yeah, it's just, you can see that through line. Even like the most famous case of testicular cancer ever is Lance Armstrong, and even he waited 4 months and knew that something was wrong. Obviously, he had symptoms. He had a very swollen and tender, like very painful testicle injury, and just didn't do anything because he just thought it was part of his training or his sport, and didn't really talk to anyone about it, didn't mention it. And I think that is definitely something that has been a problem and continues to be an issue here with how young men are discussing this.
Yeah, I agree. And I wonder, again, back to some of these men on the podcast, but only a couple of them have said that they had a doctor, a pediatrician, tell them to check themselves. The doctors don't do that. They don't say as you become older, like 12, 13, that that's something that you should do. And that just seems so basic to me. I mean, now that I know more, I mean, I didn't know that before, but
I wonder sometimes if some medical professionals think, let's cover these basic things that are general problems for a lot of young people, and think maybe this rare, odd thing that's out there may not be as important to mention.
right.
And of course it is, but we're still getting there. That's why we all got to keep working. We're still trying to get to this message of you got to tell people if it happens, if you find a lump, anything. We could look at the journey of breast cancer advocates, because that's like way ahead in awareness, and get it treated, get checked, and things like that. it's coming, but it's still going to take some time for testicular cancer awareness and people not as being as worried about it to get out there. I think one thing that will happen with time naturally, we don't need to wait for it, we can help now by what we're doing, is that there is such a fear attached to cancer. And of course, it's rightfully so. I can look at my own lifetime and go back to when it was almost certainly a death sentence, it seemed like. Or if people had to get treatment, it was really horrendous and they didn't really have a great chance. We progressed all these years. There's a lot more treatments, and there are a lot more people getting checked out earlier, and more people are living that are diagnosed with cancer, but the mentality, it seems like, hasn't shifted very far. It's just such a bad word that scares people, and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
don't want to talk about it and say things about it, or they're just naturally going to fear it. And as medicine gets better, that's going to change. But in the meantime, all the groups that do the kind of stuff we do have to keep doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So any final thoughts, about what Max might think about what we're doing, about any of the stuff we've talked about Max, anything we want to just go around and end with?
Well, I can start. I think that I'd like to believe that Max is looking down and being very proud of this. A lot of this is what he wanted to do. And so that's the good part. It's carrying on something that he wanted to do so much. And we miss him, we always will, but we can do this.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think that I feel the same way. I have ups and downs with it. I have a little bit of a different relationship with that idea of what Max would think. Um, as you all know, like when Max got sick, I was not in a good place in my life. I was
Right.
not working really, and my job kind of became to help Max and take him to appointments. And like I would go over to Dad's during the day because he didn't want to be there by himself. And, at that time, that was kind of my main responsibility. And, I took it very seriously, but at the same time, I knew that Max wanted me to do more with my own life and kind of, get out there and work and have a stable career and everything. And that wasn't happening, when he passed away. And that's one thing that I think about. I always think I can do more, and I think he would want me to do more and try new things. But I do think he is proud of us for not giving up and for also trying to carry on the wishes that he expressed to us in terms of what he wanted or what his plan was when he did get better, because that really was his thought, was that he was going to get better and do this type of advocacy work for young adults with cancer and testicular cancer. And, I do think that's a really important thing that we carry on. Like I said, definitely for me personally, I definitely want to do more and be more involved. And I hope that in the next 10 years of the foundation, if we're lucky enough to have that, that I will, that we'll be doing a lot more and different things. But I am proud of what we've accomplished so far, and I think Max would be too.
Yeah, I agree with what you both said. I can't add to that because I think he would be proud too. And I'm just glad that we can do it as a team. I think it's nice that the three of us can
Yeah,
figure it out, and whether it's going to
definitely.
Whitewater or providing that scholarship or the
Hmm.
podcasts or writing or anything we can do, it's been all of us trying to get that done for Max. So
Hmm.
let's look ahead 10 years. Well, you never know. So
Yeah, right. That's kind of how I just think of it like that. Of you know, I think Max was like a very accepting person, so I do think that he would be very happy with what we've done and would not want to be like, "Oh, you didn't do enough." I always just think of, yeah, there's more we could do in the future, and I think what you said, Dad, about just how things are changing, how the advocacy is changing, and that's a very interesting opportunity for us, in terms of how we move forward. So I'm glad that we have this and that we have an opportunity to help people and everything. So.
Well, I will end with what Max always was saying when he was going through his treatment, which is that he, never give up. And we won't either as we keep going with our Max Mallory Foundation and the podcast. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to our program on your favorite podcast directory. You can also visit the Max Mallory Foundation at www.maxmalloryfoundation.com/podcast to listen to previous podcast episodes or donate to the foundation. Join us again next time for another episode of Don't Give Up on Testicular Cancer.